What if fashion is about to change completely? Not just the styles, but what our clothes are actually made from. Hello and welcome to Regen on Purpose, where we explore regenerative leadership, delivery and systems that strengthen over time. I'm Karen Gray. Let's begin. Will we soon be wearing clothes grown from plants? Well, that's already starting to happen. The reason I wanted to do this episode is quite personal. As I've mentioned in my last episode, I've always had sensitive skin, but as I've got older, it's become even more sensitive. I've started paying far more attention to the products I was using, ingredients, fragrances, chemicals, and then one day I realized, why was I paying attention to what I was putting on my skin, but I was not looking at what I was wearing every day? Because clothes sit against our skin constantly. And yet, most of us never really think about what modern fabrics are actually made from. And well, once I started looking into this properly, I realized fashion may be heading somewhere very different. Ever thought about the fabrics you're putting on your skin every day? Because most of modern clothes are made from oil. Polyester, nylon, acrylic. Plastic turned into fashion. And while most of us have heard about fast fashion by now, things are starting to change. Some companies are creating materials made from mushrooms, pineapple leaves, banana fibres, hemp, Tencel, and organic cotton. Even things like sewing threads and elastic are starting to evolve too, which, well, sounds a little bit mad at first, but it's happening. So today we're talking about where fashion is going, and while the future of clothing might actually be grown instead of manufactured. So here's something that genuinely surprised me when I started looking into this properly. A huge percentage of clothes hanging in our wardrobe today are made from plastic. Not cotton, not natural fibres, plastic. Fossil fuels turned into fashion. And every time we wash some of those clothes, tiny plastic particles break down and disappear into the water system. Most of us never really think about it because clothes just feel normal, don't they? You buy them, you wear them, you wash them. End of story. But once you start paying attention, you realize fashion connects to so many bigger systems. Oil, waste, water, landfill, overconsumption, social media, identity, all of it. And well, the deeper I went into this topic, the more fascinating it became. I also think we forget how much fashion has changed. In my parents' generation, they bought fewer clothes. People repaired things, coats lasted years, shoes got resold. There was value attached to clothing. Now fashion moves incredibly fast. New trends every week, next day delivery, buy it, wear it once, move on to the next thing. And when something moves that quickly, it usually becomes disposable too. And while social media has accelerated all of this massively, fashion used to follow seasons. Now it follows algorithms. Outfits become content. People feel pressure not to repeat clothes online. Trends come and go in days. And the result is mountains of textile waste. Cheap clothes that don't last. Synthetic fibres piling up in landfills. Clothing worn a handful of times before being thrown away. And the thing is, cheap fashion is really, truly cheap. The cost just shows up somewhere else in the system. But this is where things are really starting to change, and it's becoming interesting. Because while on one side of the fashion industry, it became increasingly synthetic and disposable, another side is quietly starting to experiment with something very different. Materials inspired by nature. And while some of this sounds futuristic, there are companies making leather alternatives from mushrooms, actual mushrooms. The root system, called Mycelium, can be grown into leather-like materials using fewer resources than traditional leather. And this isn't just a tiny startup that's doing it anymore. Big brands are getting involved. Dylan McCarthy has been working with mushroom leather materials for years. Yvonne Hermes, one of the biggest luxury fashion houses in the world, has explored mushroom-based leather for future products. And then there's Adidas, a company built largely around synthetic sportswear. Even they've started experimenting with mycelium-based trainers and lower impact materials, which tells you something bigger is shifting. And then there's one of my favorite examples, Pineatex, which is made from pineapple leaf fibres. Now this is the part that I love. Pineapple leaves used to be agricultural waste, something left behind after harvesting, usually burned or thrown away. Now they're being turned into fashion materials. This is such a great regenerative idea. One system's waste becomes another system's resource. There are also materials now being developed from mushroom leather, pineapple fibres, banana fibres, seaweed, cactus, regenerative cotton, hemp, Tencel, organic cotton. And well, hemp might be one of the most underrated materials of all. It grows quickly, uses less water than conventional cotton, needs fewer pesticides, and creates really durable fabric. Tencel is interesting too. It's made from sustainable sourced wood pulp and is designed to be soft, breathable, and lower impact than many synthetic fibers. And even smaller things in fashion are starting to evolve. Sewing threads, elastic material, packaging, labels. People are starting to rethink the entire system, not just the fabrics itself. And then I came across the Good Bra Company. And well, this really made me stop and think, because they asked a very simple question. Why are bras something worn directly against the skin all day, almost entirely made from plastic? Polyester, nylon, spandex, synthetic, elastic, polyester thread. And once you hear that, you really can't unhear it. What fascinated me was they've spent years trying to redesign every single component using more natural alternative instead. Organic cotton, Tencel, natural rubber elastic, plastic-free sewing threads, even compostable packaging. And then their products are designed to eventually break down naturally rather than sit in landfills for hundreds of years. Now, whether every solution scales perfectly or not isn't really the point. The point is, people are starting to rethink things as previously accepted as normal, even underwear. And to me, that's where real change usually starts. In fact, even Levi's now experimenting with hemp-based denim. They developed something called cottonized hemp to make hemp feel softer and more wearable. And for the 150th anniversary of the iconic 501 jeans, Levi released plant-based version using organic cotton, hemp blends, natural dyes, recycled fibers, and plant-based patches instead of leather. And I think this is fascinating because denim is one of the most recognized products in fashion. And now even companies like Levi are now openly talking about circular fashion, regenerative cotton, and encouraging people to buy better and wear longer. That tells you the industry knows things need to change, which is ironic, really, because after decades of chasing synthetic convenience, fashion is rediscovering the value of natural systems again. Now, to be fair, not every eco-material is automatically regenerative. Some vegan leathers are still heavily plastic-based. Some sustainable collections still sit inside fast fashion business models. So this isn't black and white because the conversation is changing. Fashion companies are starting to ask, can materials be grown? Can waste become input? Can clothes last longer? Can fashion become circular instead of disposable? And well, that feels long overdue. So what does a regenerative wardrobe actually look like in real life? Well, probably not perfection. I'm definitely not saying everyone should throw everything away in their wardrobe tomorrow and replace everything with mushroom jackets and hemp trousers. That's not realistic. I think it starts with awareness, just asking slightly better questions. What is this made from? How long will it last? Do I actually need it? Could I buy fewer clothes, better things? Could I repair instead of replace? Could I choose more natural fibers over time? Could I check the label before I buy? Could I wash clothes more gently so they last longer? Could I stop treating clothes as disposable? Because maybe regeneration isn't really about having the perfect wardrobe. Maybe it's about rebuilding a healthier relationship with consumption itself. Buying more intentionally, keeping things longer, valuing quality again. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I keep learning through all these conversations. Regeneration often starts with simply noticing what something is made from, where it came from, what happens after we're finished with it. And once you start asking those questions, everyday things start to look different, even your wardrobe. Maybe the future of fashion isn't manufactured, maybe it's grown. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time for another conversation. Thank you for listening to Regen on Purpose. Sustainability is a starting point. Regeneration is the natural progression. Until next time, design for strength and start building what lasts.